Welcome to IMC Live, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. We're here to help you make connections, learn, and get results for your business. I'm Alan Fenewald, Associate Content Director at the Industrial Marketing Agency, Gorilla 76, and one of your IMC Live hosts. And this week, we're going to be talking about how most manufacturers don't know how to quantify marketing success. I'm sure we're all very familiar with this in the manufacturing world. So they tend to default to asking, what's the ROI after only 3 to 6 months? But when you're selling CapEx equipment through a longer, complex, and consultative sales cycle, answering that ROI question at any given moment can get messy at best. So in this show, we welcome Gorilla 76 co-founder Joe Sullivan, the man, the myth, the legend, to the stage to examine both the leading signals and the trailing metrics to know if your marketing program is positioning you for business growth and how to talk to your executive team about its progress over time. So, Joe, in my mind, you're the best person that we could talk to about this. You handle this kind of thing on a regular basis. Can you tell folks a little bit about your experience and what the agency has been like for you so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's good to see all of you here. It's been a little while since I've been a guest on the show. I get to observe and see bits and pieces of these frequently, but nice to be back as somebody actually talking. Yeah, so I'm one of the two co-founders of Gorilla. So I've been part of this organization for over 19 years, and working in the manufacturing sector now for probably 13 or 14, like almost exclusively. And so I have the luxury as the person who's really in charge, like oversees sales at Gorilla. And then I also host the Manufacturing Executive podcast, which some of you may be familiar with. That's been running for 270-ish consecutive weeks. Haven't missed a Tuesday morning yet, so that's one of the things I'm most proud of in my career. But the it gives me the luxury on both fronts of talking to a lot of manufacturing leaders. I get to, I probably have a few calls with prospects every week. I get to have deeper calls with them when they progress to a second call. I get to help advise our clients, especially in the early stages, and then I get to talk to manufacturing leaders once a week on my podcast. So probably the biggest benefit to me of having been doing this for so long is just all of the insights I gain from those conversations and the patterns that start to emerge. And it's just been really informative to me to really understand like how are manufacturing leaders thinking. And in the case of, or in today's context, how are they thinking about results and return on investment and what success looks like for a marketing program. So hopefully I can, distill some of that down today in a way that'll be helpful to some of you and answer some questions the best I can. And then when I can't answer the questions, kick it over to people like Aaron and Alan and Brendan and Peyton as I look around our room at Maya and Connor and all the other gorillas in here. So feel free to chime in and other. I'd love this to be collaborative conversation too. If others of you in this room have your own insights to share from your experiences. So
I love it. Yeah, Joe, let's just start with the big picture. Why do so many manufacturers just default to asking what's the ROI when they're evaluating marketing efforts in the first place?
yeah, I mean, I think that's the question that anybody spending a lot of money on anything for their business is probably gonna ask, right? Like it's how do we know that the money we are spending is producing a positive return? How soon will that happen? How do we know we're on the right track, et cetera? And so, it's naturally one of those first questions I get. Like I think about the sales calls I take with manufacturing leaders for Gorilla, and that comes up on just about every first call. Like, I need to know that this is going, if I make this investment, it's going to, produce some positive ROI that's going to be measurable, and I know it's coming from the things I'm doing. And frankly, I'd be asking the same question if I were, an outsider looking in, or if I'm trying to make some kind of investment to grow our business too. I'm looking at how is this going to positively impact the financial statements over time. So I think that, it's sort of an obvious question, but I think the other part of it is, I don't know that, a lot of manufacturing leaders know what else to ask. Like there's a lot of companies that we've dealt with over the years are more, and probably a lot of you experience this, that a lot of B2B manufacturers, mid-size, are not often the most marketing savvy business leaders. They're more sales driven organizations, have been traditionally, maybe have trouble distinguishing between what is marketing and what is sales. And it's easier for them to see that, I hired this salesperson and they, closed these deals over some period of time. Versus, marketing's a little more of like a black box to a lot of people, maybe from bad past experiences, or just the fact that like attribution's hard, as we all know. So that's how I'd answer that.
Hmm. So when do you feel like the ROI conversation should start? Because it feels like it often maybe comes too early or in the wrong place. So where is the right place for that?
Well, I do think it's a very appropriate question to ask up front. I just think the way that, I would answer that question, or, any of you maybe who are internal marketers, looking for a budget to do something, from, your whoever manages you, or your CEO or president. I think it's a perfectly reasonable question to be asked early on. I just think that the answer to that question requires more nuance than, well, I expect a return within 6 months or 15 months, or whatever, right? And I think that's probably a lot of what we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, I think you can start to answer like the ROI question when you have some proven, like a track record of success with that channel or activity that you're doing, right? Because like
Sure.
it's hard to say, oh, we've never done this before. What's going to be the ROI of this program? It's like, well, I hope it's, for every dollar in, we get $10 out. But, what's the reality? Sometimes, depending on what you're selling, there's different channels that might be the more effective for you, or different platforms. Maybe it's, if you're doing a paid social program, maybe LinkedIn's your bread and butter. Maybe you're going to have more success with Instagram, depending on like the audience you're going after. So yeah, I agree with you, Joe, on the nuance there.
Yeah, I think there's nuance within the markets you serve too, and somebody who's, I don't know, targeting aerospace engineers, that like that, where there might be only, I don't know, 50 companies out there, or less, that, and therefore only, a few thousand people you're trying to reach, and say you're trying to run a paid social program, versus in automotive, where you're targeting tier one, tier two, tier three, like suppliers, and there are literally tens of thousands, if not more, individuals out there. So there's, audience size matters. Are we marketing something that's like truly a differentiated product, or is it more of a commodity, and therefore it's harder to differentiate? Is it a market that's emerging and there's more education required, versus is it an established market that maybe, there's not a whole lot of education that has to be done, and people kind of know what they need to know? I mean, there's so many variables that, surround that question of how long is it going to take to get meaningful results. So you lean into the patterns you've seen, but you have to sort of apply that to any particular company's situation, for sure.
So you've mentioned that you spend your days pretty much talking to manufacturing executives, as your podcast is so aptly named, The Manufacturing Executive. What are these manufacturers telling you that they're looking for? Like what is it that they really want to accomplish with their marketing?
Yeah, I see a lot of people approach us with some specific thing that they need or think they need. A lot of times it's tactical. we're kind of struggling with our current agency. Communication's been tough. Account manager keeps turning over, or like, we're just not seeing a positive return. We don't know what they're doing from day to day, whatever those things might be. We hear things like, you know, we know we need to rebuild our website. Our messaging is just off. We're trying to enter this new market and don't really know how to go about doing it. But a lot of times it starts with something tactical that they're looking to achieve, and then my job is to sort of back them up and say, okay, well, I don't know that SEO or Google ads or a series of a content series or something is truly what you need yet. Like let's look at what the company's trying to accomplish here, and like what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve, and what are the biggest issues we're trying to tackle here, and then um, let's back it up from there and sort of reverse engineer the program to get you there, and then start looking at how do we know we're successful at each step along the way.
You mentioned that it's kind of like part of your job to like help them like back up a little bit. Like, how do you kind of, if you put like your in-house hat on, like how could you kind of like, I guess, what advice would you give to the folks in this room who are maybe experiencing that same sort of situation? Like they go to the conference room and they just say, your leader says, I want brochures, or that's like just one example, but they could just say, I really think we should be doing X. How can you help, I guess, reframe?
Yeah, I don't have the luxury of having worked in-house as a marketer, because I founded this agency after working in an agency for like 2 years, and then founded this when I was 24 years old. And but I know from a lot of looking around the room at some of you who are on my team and came from working in-house in manufacturing organizations, and others of you that I know that do. I know that part of your job is simply like you got to knock out this trade show, like, and you've got these brochures you got to do, and there's like you're in charge of the website, and so many of you have to wear so many hats. I know that that's the case, and that is what it is, right? So I think that, like, when you're at the stage of your year, or if this happens with sort of annual planning, or if it's I don't know how it works in some of your organizations, but you know, when you hear all these requests coming in, like we need to do this and this and this and this, I think I always encourage people to get into that advisor seat. Like I've talked about that on this show before, but like think of yourself as, you know, not just the tactician, but like the marketing advisor that is there to help support the business outcomes that your company leader is trying to get to. Because you may be hearing we really need to, our search rank, we're slipping in search engines and we need to be more visible, or we've, our website's a mess and blah blah blah, whatever it is. But I think it's your job, just as an internal marketer, just as it would be my team's as an outside advisor, to make sure you are sort of at the table with your CEO, or your, the head of your department, or the part of your organization you work in, and be really in tune with what are those goals. Are we trying to grow from 20 to 30 million next year? Are we trying to, overcome a certain perception that we do this even though we do all these other things? Is it that we need to diversify our customer base because we've got, all our eggs in these two baskets, and it's makes us a little bit unstable? Is it like, I think the job to be done there is to really make sure we understand, as the marketer, what the leadership team at your company sees as like the most important things to accomplish. And then that way, when you're saying that way, it kind of gives you the firepower you need to say, okay, well, I don't know if this thing you're suggesting maybe is the best solution if this is what we're really trying to accomplish. Because you guys are the marketers, you know what things you need to do to accomplish certain objectives. I think it's really easy to just say, okay, yeah, we'll knock that thing out. But the harder thing to do, and frankly, the thing that will make you more valuable inside your organization is to say, okay, I hear you, CEO or boss or whoever, that you really want to do this, but if we've agreed that these are the things we need to accomplish, um, at a company level, whether it's revenue targets or new market entry or whatever, you know, I feel pretty strongly that the tactical or executional things that are going to support, reaching those outcomes are this and this and this, and here's why, and here's how we are going to measure whether we are successful. And these are the early signals that tell us we're on track to achieving those things. And the signals 3 months later, and how we're ultimately going to look back in a retrospective way and say, did we get where we're trying to go?
Yeah, and that feels related to a question we had in the chat, that Joel might want to come on and ask you live in person.
Sure. Hey, Joel.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Good to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. It was a little off topic, and it may be kind of before you guys ever get involved, but
Mhm.
I'm struggling with, trying to present new tactics or methods, channels to use, stuff, we've discussed on this show. So I know, from you guys or other people's data that it works in general, but I'm finding it hard to get the leadership to buy in, the sales team to understand, like, hey, this is actually good because it's not something we've done. They just default to well, we know our buyers, or our industry is still a little slow to adopt, so it is very much still, go out, glad hand, shake hands, meet with people. So trying to get them to shift to more modern digital kind of ways of marketing. I can't even get to the discussion of showing value after the fact, because I can't even get them to buy into it in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I imagine there's others of you probably, if you're not physically nodding or feeling that pain too, sometimes that set shift is just hard. Can you give me a little more context? Like, what are some of the things that you're trying to bring to the table and feel like are kind of just being brushed aside?
For the last couple of years, I've been trying to push for using LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and the just gut reaction is they're not on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So because I've been pushing it, I'm starting to get them to come around to, okay, maybe there are communities or places we could find people. I'm not even allowed to have those direct conversations with the customers or engineers we work with to say, like, hey, where are you getting information if you didn't already know about us? So I'm being kind of gated from actually talking to the customer directly and only going through the sales team, getting the information, and they're just making the assumption, well, they're not on here. So something like LinkedIn that would be completely free for us to use, they shut down. And then just recently, we've had a push for a specific market that we're trying to kind of re-energize. So there's an advertiser we've been doing, with their publication, digital print kind of combination, some newsletter, found some success with that.
Okay.
So that publication, I've dug into what other options they have, and there was a webinar that they do. They host it, they promote it, they see it as a lead gen tool.
Mm-hmm.
Got all the information on it. They were interested until I got the price. And then from the price, with that particular product line, we'd sell 1 to 2 products and we pay for it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough. So to me, that's, pretty low stakes on the expense on that, they say they get typically between 250, 300 people attending, and we just have to convert 1 to cover the cost, and they were shut down right away.
Yeah, that's a tough uphill battle. If there's just sort of not a willingness to try new things. I mean, as I think about your engineering audience, you need to reach, like, we feel free other gorillas in the room here to like speak up, but I know there are a lot of engineering job titles that we have had plenty of success reaching, in on LinkedIn. Others sometimes, like, at least we're using a paid budget, like getting to them on Meta platforms. But um, sometimes it may take a trial and an example and saying like, okay, I've built this custom audience on LinkedIn. I can see that there are 45,000 human beings who fit this job description with this
Yeah.
set of job titles and this geography. Um, and or these interests, and you know I believe they are here, and maybe the way we've been trying to get at them has just not been we haven't been doing it effectively. Like, are we out there educating and providing insights that matter to those people, or are we just talking about ourselves and our products? So I think there's a lot of factors that come into play here. I'd be curious just to hear what others have to say.
I saw Brendan unmute too. So
Yeah, Joel, this is tough. I would say like most of the companies that come to start working with Gorilla aren't typically running any sort of LinkedIn ads and usually not doing any sort of Google ads either. So we typically are starting those programs from scratch. And we're talking to C-suite executives to get them to get buy-in into the program. And that LinkedIn one is always tough because like what is paid social or even just organic social on that platform? And one thing I have found that has been pretty effective in communicating the value of people being on the platform is building out a test audience of who I think the ICP is, right? Like based on the discovery work that we've done, who is the companies in the audience, what are the job titles, the job functions that we're trying to go after, and build out like what the test audience is going to look like if you're doing paid social. Another thing that you could do is just go into your CRM and pull in all of like those brand champion type contacts that you have and just look them up on LinkedIn. They probably all have profiles. And I just put them into a big presentation and
yeah, like
then
screenshot their
screenshot their
profiles.
profiles and I just put them into a big Google sheet and sit down with your team for like a half hour and literally just like hit the next arrow button on your slideshow and just show them every single person in your CRM that is currently on LinkedIn. Maybe you could pull and see if they have like any active, posts in the last, couple months to show like these people are actually on LinkedIn, or doing some sort of activity where they're reacting, commenting, resharing. And I would just go through that exercise and like, hey, these are the exact people that we are talking to that are already customers for our company that are on LinkedIn. And I can, I bet you that the rest of your audience, at least a portion of them, are on LinkedIn in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
also,
great. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say the other thing that I've done too, like, LinkedIn is definitely also not for everybody. Like it depends on who your audience is. I've had some success like bringing up Reddit subreddits and like, hey, there's like, I don't know, 2 million people on our manufacturing and there's hundreds of thousands of people in our machining. And these are the exact conversations that they're having. So like I pull in like screenshots of conversations that are happening in Reddit. I've also done the same thing, like just going into Facebook groups, especially for like more of those shop floor type people, like machining, welding, like that sort of thing. Like there is a ton of Facebook groups out there. So I just like try to get into those groups. A lot of them are private, some of them are public. So you can get in there and screenshot like profile pictures and conversations that are happening. Like I think you just gotta like do a little mining work and like show them go like show them that stuff. And like just present it, like show like, yeah, here's who exactly in our audience is what they're doing on the social medias.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in with Katie mentioned this in the chat as well, but this is something that, we do even at Gorilla is we kind of have like experimental line items in our budget. And Katie, that's something I think that she's doing at her company. So, you could position it as something that like you understand is risky, but like say it's a trial, like I've worked with clients in the past that weren't comfortable starting a full scale demand gen program yet. So we've done, like exploratory, like audience development and like, are we actually going to be able to get in front of these people? Like, let's try it for 4 months and stop. And then like revisit and see what's going on. But yeah, I definitely agree with the screenshot idea. Like it's kind of like the same thing of like a customer testimonial. It's like that credibility. It's like you're just kind of flipping the script and doing it internally. But
Yeah. And another good way to build that credibility that we've seen work is just starting to use your personal LinkedIn or whatever channel that you're trying to use in the same way that you want to use your brand and be able to show that it is engaging with the audience and that you are onto something there.
so we've got
So I'd say,
about
like, on that point with Alan, go and check out Richard Ward's posts for Acromat. He is doing really great work on like telling their story on LinkedIn, just on his personal LinkedIn. So yeah, I think he's doing a good job of proving out that he's getting good engagement on there. So he's a good one to go and look at, from the in-house side of things.
and that's organically.
Yep.
So doesn't cost anything but the time. And I think that's like kind of where I wanted to go a little bit next with this conversation. We've got about 15 minutes left. Is like, I think like a lot of this comes to Joe, like you've talked a lot about trade-offs, right? And like this short term versus long term, and like marketing is not all instant gratification. Like there's a lot that has to go in to like build a program and build your brand and credibility over time. So you've said in the past that trying to get results fast often comes at a cost. Can you just like kind of unpack, I guess, a little bit of just like that long-term vision, short-term wins, and the balance between?
Yeah, I think again it like comes back to understanding the outcomes. Where's the lead? Where are the leaders of your company trying to take the company? By when do they need to get there or achieve certain milestones? I'll use an example. Like we've worked with, there's probably people in this room whose companies are private equity owned, and then there's probably others who are not. Like what I've found is, like, just to use an example, sometimes we've talked to companies who have a private equity firm that owns them. They might be in year 4 of what's a 5-year cycle, and they are like getting the house ready to sell, right? It's like, let's make sure the website looks right. Let's, make sure the numbers are like look good on the financial statements. We are generating new revenue through marketing. There's urgency, in short, right? And other situations, just maybe that might be the mindset of your company right now. Like we've been struggling, that tariffs have been hurting our company, and we're like, we need to see a sales lift over the next 2 quarters, or we're going to be laying people off, or I don't know. There's different situations that create urgency. Well, the marketing plan that you design and the things you choose to do when there's urgency, because hitting some sales target by is what is most important to the leaders of your company, is going to look a lot different than I have clients like that, but then I have clients that are like, the company is doing well, we are growing, we're stable, we're trying to get from we want to see our growth go from 30 to 50 million over the next 5 years, and we think we can do that. And we want to do this right. And we need to like be making money along the way, obviously, and like see a positive impact from marketing, but we have more patience to do the things that are going to help us build a sustainable, like growing business. I love those companies, obviously, because like we can, there's patience. Like I think about some of our best clients, there is enough patience there to do the right things. Like we're going to spend time talking to your customers and identifying patterns and getting real insights, so we can hone your messaging and then go test that messaging at scale in front of 40,000 people and see what people are responding to. Because this message, if you got 2 videos running, for example, and it's like the subject matter experts talking, and this one people are dropping off after 4 seconds, and this one people are watching for 57 seconds out of a minute, like that tells you something about what messaging is resonating and allows you to make refinements to it. And then helps determine like what content should we invest in making to support that messaging. to then arm our sales team from a sales enablement perspective, or like how that will inform ad campaigns we continue to run. And when you have that, the mindset of we are building for the long term, it allows you to do those things that are going to have a greater impact over time versus we have a sales target we have to hit by the end of December or the end of March, if this is today or something. And it's like, okay, well, we better like ramp up Google ads really fast and go get whatever demand exists out there. And we better like arm our sales team with, very quickly with some assets that are going to help them sell, and they're going to be, hitting the streets and, dialing for dollars and whatever. It's just the decisions you make about what you're going to do in your marketing program are going to be largely dictated by uh, what you need to achieve by when, as laid out by your leadership team. So I don't know if that helps answer that question, or if there are follow-ups to that.
Yeah. So what if you feel like leadership isn't thinking long-term enough? Like, what are the risks of nearsighted marketing?
Yeah, and sometimes that's just the mindset, even if there isn't some, very specific circumstance that's driving it. It's just, and I hear that plenty. Like I'm thinking about one conversation I've been in over the course of the last couple of weeks of somebody who's contemplating hiring Gorilla, and they're like, I need to know that this is going to produce a positive return, and we haven't really given them a time frame or a specific plan yet, but we're kind of still in a discovery stage with them. And so I think as marketers, it's your jobs and our jobs to um, set realistic expectations. And I think so much of that gets overlooked. Like I think my company, Gorilla, like we were probably guilty of that for a long time. And I don't know if it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I feel like we got a lot better at having those very transparent conversations up front with prospects that maybe then became clients, about this is how long it's going to take to achieve X or Y or Z. These are the signals we're going to look at along the way that show us we are on or off track. But I can remember a very specific instance of one client that we worked with, probably 5 or 6 years ago, where we went through some pretty thorough discovery with them up front. They communicated to us that their typical sales cycle was like 9 to 12 months. I'm sure there's people in this room who have longer sales cycles inside your companies. And it was very tangible results attributable to marketing were going to be really important to them. And so like we learned these things from them. We designed a program for them. We set expectations about what we're looking for along the way. But 6 months in, they fired us because there wasn't a positive ROI on what they had spent to date. And we kind of like looked around the room at each other and were like, what just happened here? Like what have we seen? Well, we've seen a steady uptick in visibility in tangible qualified leads that have been generated directly from the work we've been doing, of business being quoted, like pipeline building. But if you got a 9 to 12 month sales cycle and you're a few months into running campaigns after doing some like foundational messaging and content work and strategy, there was zero chance they were going to see a positive ROI unless they just got lucky and somebody bought something 4 times as fast as they would normally buy something. So I think that realistic expectation setting is really important, because either the product of having that transparent conversation with who you report to, who may not be a marketing expert, whereas you are, is going to produce, one of two outcomes. Either they're going to say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can see why, it's going to take that length of time to get where we're trying to go. And I like that you have, laid out some some sort of leading KPIs that will give us confidence we're doing the right things and allow us to make adjustments as we go, or they're going to say, now we can't wait that long. Like there's just no way. And now you know, like, okay, well, we can't make that investment. Like that's not a thing we can do. Like this, my CEO or boss is requires that we hit a more tangible ROI on a shorter timeline, and then you have decisions to make about what things you can do that will show impact and build confidence within that timeline. You're probably gonna execute some different things instead. So
Mhm. I think this gets at, like you've mentioned, a few times, like those leading indicators. There are leading signals. There are metrics that you can be kind of like glomming onto, depending on like the program you're running. And, sometimes that might satiate leadership enough to like say, okay, we're moving in the right direction. We're making progress. And I do love that, like tie back to the sales cycle, because like I think one of the impacts of good marketing is maybe that velocity through the sales cycle can improve over time. That could be something that you see change, but you have to measure it and kind of benchmark against it. So I asked the class, I'm calling y'all the class today, what are y'all tracking and sharing with your leadership to prove your progress? I'm just going to read a couple here. We're focusing on SEO and brand awareness. So I like to share noticeable improvements in organic and direct conversions on our website. Makes sense to me. Jennifer says that she tracks the source, stage quote value. This way she can show the totals for a specific source and if it converted into a sale or if it's still in the sales process. Also, she says she loves when the sales team takes notes for loss reasons, because that qualitative information I think is really important too, and like the leading signals. I think that's one of the leading signals that you'd see if you launch like a big brand program of sorts is, are you just seeing like an improvement, or is your messaging starting to show up in the how did you hear about us, or why are you reaching out, or in sales conversations, sort of thing. That can be a leading signal too. Christopher said that he's refining their ABM strategy. So they are focused on prospect engagement and aligning goals with the sales team, and considering a new CRM to scale the growth. I would highly recommend that. No better data to benchmark yourself against than your own. I think that's really the biggest piece that a lot of times I think manufacturers are missing is like, they don't adopt that CRM. No one's taking notes in it. No one's like enforcing that. And so you're kind of going off of just like, what's the industry benchmark when it's so different. Like, Joe, you brought up like aerospace earlier. Like if you're selling to aerospace, I just saw another person post on LinkedIn about like how hard it is to sell to aerospace. Like they make it a very friction-full process to sell there. And like, I just feel like it's a completely different, like if you're benchmarking off of the same metrics that they would be benchmarking off of, but you're not selling to that space, you're just not measuring yourself accurately. So yeah, lots of leading signals there. But then I think like to get into like the nuts and bolts, like you said, Joe, ROI is a fair question. And like eventually you would want to be able to see that revenue metric. Like how has this program, so I think what Jennifer said of like tracking the source, think about different ways to track the source. Is it all just software source of like where the web traffic came from in your web form, or like can you also be thinking through self-reported attribution? How did you hear about us? And like that qualitative information that you can then normalize and kind of populate your own reports. And then, I think the other two that you kind of consider is, Dale, I will never forget our conversations around like opportunities and quotes and I just think like, it's not just how many deals closed, but how many opportunities were brought in. too. And I think all of that's trailing, those are trailing metrics. And eventually, just to close it out, like your win rate and the deal size. Win rate and close rate, that's sales, right? Like we can't necessarily control that. But I think that if like you have a holistic program where sales and marketing are working together, ideally that would improve. So yeah, I don't know. Anything to add there, Joe or Alan?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd kind of close with, and we're coming up on time here, is I think there are people out there, probably more in the business leader category, who say, use the term like vanity metrics, like, there's rankings in search engines, maybe traffic even to your website, or contacts generated, or like whatever they might be. Like these are vanity metrics. They're not meaningful. All that matters is what shows up on the P&L. And I push back pretty hard on that, because I think that you need certain metrics to that are aligned with that outcome you're trying to achieve. So after 1 month, after 3 months, after 6 months, are we on track? So you just have to pick the right ones and help your leader understand, like, this is how we know we are going in the right direction. Because if we do have a 9-month sales cycle, well, what you don't want is 9 or 12 months into running a marketing program, like be looking back saying, look with your fingers crossed, saying, all right, I hope that worked. Like we need to be able to make adjustments along the way. So what things are we going to measure that help us understand if we are tracking the right way? And then you need to help the person you're reporting to understand why those metrics matter, and be looking at those things regularly.
Yeah. And that came up in the chat too, with just like, how granular does your reporting need to be?
Mhm.
Maybe not so much. Like, especially if you're presenting to a leadership team who doesn't need to be in the weeds, like Joe said, decode it for them. You don't need to just throw a bunch of numbers up on a screen. Like that can just be overwhelming, and invite questions that, I don't know, maybe you're not necessarily wanting either. So yeah, just tell the story, I think. All right. Well, before we wrap, Joe, I know that you kind of closed up, but I mean, is there any big like takeaway you want folks to walk away with today? Any big mindset shift you hope they carry with them?
I think I would bet a lot of you are aligned, I would guess, with some of the things that I've talked about, and it's more that it's hard to communicate that up the chain, maybe, or to help get your leaders thinking a little bit differently. So, I'm hoping that some of the things we talked about today are helpful. I think like the best thing you can do is, I know for some of you it's harder than for others to get access to the leadership team, but to really just get aligned with them on like what are the most important things this company needs to achieve over the next 2 years, or pick a time frame, and like don't take it at face value, like dig a little deeper, get all those things down, and then prioritize them together and say, okay, well, if this is really the most important focus, like how are we going to get there, and what marketing activities do we need to do, and then how do we know that we are on track to success with each of those things we're doing? How are we going to physically measure it? And then as you have your quarterly or monthly or every other week check-ins, or whatever, like keep coming back to those things and say, okay, here's where we're at. We're off track here. Here's why. Here's what we're going to do about it. We're on track here and here and here. But if that comes from leadership and you can always be referencing it, it's sort of a constant reminder of why you're doing what you're doing and where progress stands. So that I think it's easy for them to forget that 3 or 6 months down the road. So.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. It's always great to have you on. If folks want to hear more from you, I'm guessing LinkedIn's the best way to keep in touch.
I would say so. Yeah. You'll find me. I'm one of 10,000 Joe Sullivans on LinkedIn. So, I'm part of Gorilla 76, so put those two things together and you'll find me. But would be happy to connect with any of you, answer questions wherever I can. So yeah.
Thanks again. Well, everyone, our next episode is going to be on September 18th. Topic to be announced, but Alan, Brendan, Nihal, and I are chatting later today to lock that in and talk about the rest of the year. Between now and then, if you want to keep this conversation going or start another one, you can join us on Circle's discussion boards at industrialmarketingcollective.com. And I can't believe I haven't brought it up till right now, but the Industrial Marketing Summit is happening, and we just announced the first batch of speakers. It's a great batch. See some of them. Josh was here. I think he just hopped off, but on this call today. So definitely check out industrialmarketingsummit.com. Read about the different sessions that we're going to have, and get a little bit more information, and maybe pick up an early bird ticket while you're at it. So thank you again, everyone, for joining and hanging out for as long as you did. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.